So that's one difference. And then, of course, otherwise, it's pretty much.
The players are getting underway. We see a turn 1 Temple from Nick Edgerle.
Those temples, those Scrylands have been...
I think they're great.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the Scrylands. They're better than I expected.
Godless Shrine from Reid Duke. Reid Duke's likeness is on the Knight token.
Yes, the White Knight.
And it seems very reasonable. If you've met Reid Duke, he is one of the nicest people that you'll ever have the chance to meet.
Absolutely. So, Nick just plays a Hallowed Fountain tapped and passes back to Reid. Reid is going to spend his second turn leading off with a Thoughtseize. Now, this, I think, is the reason to play Esper versus Blue-White Control, as far as if you're trying to decide between them. Thoughtseize is going to show us Watery Grave, Island, Sphinx's Revelation, Jace, Doomblade, and Thoughtseize. That's a full art player rewards Doomblade, I believe. But
there's a lot of good cards here.
There are a lot of good cards there. Now, you can take the Revelation, but you know Revelation doesn't go online until late. He's going to take the Thoughtseize. Now, I like that play. A lot of times, you want to protect your own hand. You may as well see if you can go ahead and just Thoughtseize their Thoughtseize.
Reid Duke with 27 lands.
26 on Nick's side, so that's one minor difference.
We're going to see a lot of draw go in this matchup. There's a very reactive game here that happens. Neither of these players able to really produce any kind of threat until they get to the 4th mana with Jace. Island from Reid Duke.
So yeah, so far just land go, except for that one Thoughtseize. And Nick hits his 4th mana first, being on the play, and he's going to go ahead and cast Jace Architect of Thought.
And he's got 2 options, plus or minus. Goes with the minus. Gets a little mini Factor Fiction.
Reid's going to respond with a Cycled Azorius Charm. And then we're going to see...
land.
Yeah.
That's actually very good in this matchup.
Looks like Temple, Godless Shrine, Plains. And Reid's going to split away the Scryland from the other 2. And Nick's going to take the two lands, the 2-land pile there. And he's going to pass back. So Reid untaps, draws for the turn, and it was a Sphinx's Revelation off the top. That's something that will be a lot more relevant later on, but Reid is going to land his own Jace Architect of Thought, and we're going to see the same thing. Land. Wow. The only difference there is that Nick had a Scryland within those 3, and Reid has a Watery Grave.
Now, one of the things that's kind of interesting, this is a fairly new phenomena, the dueling planeswalkers of the same name. The rules change that happened not so long ago, allowing either player to have their own planeswalker and or legends in, I shouldn't say just or legend, in play.
Yeah, the Jace acting like Oprah. You get some cards, and you get some cards, and you get some cards. Just back and forth, Giving everybody some cards. So Nick is going to plus his Jace. He does not want to give it away. And he's going to use Hero's Downfall on Reid's Jace. Follow up with a Godless Shrine and pass back. So Nick ends his turn with a Jace on 3 to Reid's lone 4 lands.
Now, when it comes to cards that can handle a Planeswalker, Reid Duke runs 4 Detention Sphere, 2 Heroes Downfall.
On the other side, Nick has a 3-and-3 split between the 2.
So 6 cards total that these players can use to remove a Planeswalker from play.
Heroes Downfall, there you see it on screen, sold out in the booth before the Invitational, in our sales booth before the Invitational started. So that's a big one. That's a big one. It's picked up a lot of steam over the past few weeks in the mono black decks, in the Esper control decks. They're going to see a Detention Sphere from Reid Duke to deal with Nick's Jace. And he's going to pass back to Nick.
We see plenty of cards in hand for both of these players. They both were able to drop a Jace. Nick drops a second Jace and immediately does the minus ability, the mini Factor Fiction, 3 cards, split them up, give me 1. Reid says, well, would you like a counterspell? And he says yes. Now, I remember in one of the previous commentaries, someone saying, oh, the cards themselves don't matter. What matters is actually just the count. And I actually would contest that. I think that what is really important, there is so few cards that are actual full-stop counterspells Counterspell is a very important card, whatever the card is. And in Reid's case, he has 3 Dissolve in his deck. How many counter magic does Nick Edgerle have?
He also has 3 copies of Dissolve. I don't see any other main deck counter spells, so no Syncopate.
Divination from Reid Duke, digging for some more cards. Reid, he's got a lot of land, he's got a lot of cards, but he doesn't have much in the way of action. This deck isn't one that has much action, but that unanswered Jace in play could be a real headache for him. Now, Reid Duke, don't count him out. He's one of the best players in the game today.
Absolutely. Yeah, so far it's been all about Jace. And as you see, Nick is going to tick his up to 3. Doesn't really matter, except that means that Jace is going to stick around for another turn if Reid doesn't answer it, and Nick is going to be able to draw some more cards off of it very likely next turn. So Reid's going to play a Godless Shrine untapped and pass back.
We see a Sphinx's Revelation here for 4 from Nick Edgerle.
And I imagine we're going to see another one right back from Reid here while Nick is tapped out. What do you think?
You know, I could see him waiting, honestly, because right now his hand is so full that what he would be doing is essentially just merfolk lootering his hand. I think more likely we're going to see him do an end of turn or an upkeep cast of Sphinx's Rev. It's safer to do it end of turn so that you can leave up mana in case there's an Aetherling. Aetherling, one of the cards that matters. I know that I believe William Jensen said that he actually is at the point where he believes that Sphinx's Revelation is one of the least important cards in the matchup.
That's pretty interesting.
Well, in his mind, there are so few counterspells and so few threats. You can't afford... I shouldn't say least important. It's one of the least important spells to counterspell.
I see.
That is what Jensen said.
So Nick ticks up his Jace to 4 counters because he's got so many cards in hand. Is likely the reason for that. And Jace can be pretty effective threat if he ultimates. Reid's going to spend the end of Nick's turn casting Sphinx's Revelation, and Nick is going to answer it with a Dissolve.
See another Sphinx's Revelation drawn by Reid Duke. A Divination also in Reid Duke's hand.
Looks like we're going to see that Divination here. This is his second copy cast this game. Does he only run
He runs 2.
Yeah, 2. That seems to be the most common number. That's how many I've been running. That's how many Nick is running, and that's how many Reid is running. It is not an all-star card, but it is nice in this sort of 3-color deck to smooth your draws and make sure you hit your land drops.
And neither player has missed a land drop yet.
Yeah, there's a pretty good reason for that. All this card draw, Jace's and Sphinx's Revelations and Azorius Charm and Divination. So quite a few. Scrylands also contributing to that. So now Nick, on his turn, is able to untap with a full grip, a Jace on 4 counters. He's used 1 Divination, but I believe he's got a second in hand. And he's going to minus Jace. He sees Thoughtseize and 2 lands. He's going to take Thoughtseize, and we're going to probably get a good look at Reid's hand here.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I think that it is not just any old card that matters, but it's actually the fullness of the entire hand. We see...
Wow, temple, quadruple temple for Reid Duke. He's got all 4 black-white temples.
Temple of Silence times 4.
Azorius Charm, Aetherling, and Sphinx's Revelation are the rest of the cards, are the spells.
Aetherling, the most important card in that hand. And remember, Reid Duke only has 1 Aetherling. Like most of these lists, these lists only running 1 Aetherling. Yeah,
we know, at least we know, Nick may not, that Reid is also running 2 copies of Blood Baron, which can end the game. But if I'm Nick, I think I'd take Aetherling. He's going to take Sphinx's Revelation.
Interesting.
Yeah, what would you have taken there?
I would take the Aetherling, and I think against Reid Duke, I wouldn't even pause. I mean, against some players, I might take some time, like I was thinking about it, trying to make them think that I was having a hard decision. Reid, I think he's a really smart player. I wouldn't bother with that.
So a cycled Azorius Charm at the end of Nick's turn for Reid. He draws another card. He's going to play one of those 4 temples in his hand. He's going to bottom that card with the Scry effect. And he's going to pass right back to Nick. Nick untaps, draws a Detention Sphere off the top. Nick likely pluses Jace here. Unless he really wants more cards, but he's got a full grip.
I think I see an Aetherling in Nick's hand.
He does have an Aetherling. He's going to plus his Jace. Now he also has, I think, a Dissolve. So he's going to cast Aetherling here, and he's got a Counterspell backup here to potentially fight a Counter War. The problem is, Counterspell backup, I believe, if he casts dissolve, he would have no mana to protect the Aetherling. Although it appears to me that Aetherling has already resolved, as Reid has just untapped and drawn for the turn. So there you see Aetherling, the
all those abilities.
Great grandson of Morphling.
Now, Aetherling supplies a 2-turn clock here. It's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, Reid at 16, that Aetherling can pump up to an 8-1 and swing twice to dispatch Reid in this game. So Reid going to go ahead and cast his own Aetherling. Nick says, all right, I'll dissolve yours.
Wow.
He says, all right, that's fine. I'll cast Supreme Verdict now that you're tapped out.
That was amazing. Wow.
Yeah. I feel like that was maybe a preemptive, a premature Aetherling from Nick because he knew about Reid's Aetherling. He left 3 mana up, assuming he was going to counter Reid's Aetherling. So Jace Fact or Fiction split shows Far Away, Azorius Charm, and Sphinx's Revelation. Nick takes the Sphinx's Revelation.
Now look at how many cards he has, though. He already has a full grip.
He's got 8. It looks like.
Yeah, I mean,
3 of which are Supreme Verdict.
I almost feel like at this point in the game, the Jace should have ticked up and just go for the ultimate Jace.
Yeah, and that would be very relevant. Nick could get, say, an Aetherling if he hadn't already wasted his.
This is a main phase Sphinx's Rev right now for 5.
Wow.
He's already got so many cards. I can't get behind that one.
He wants specific cards is the problem. So he's trying to find something else to win with at this point, I think, because his win conditions are Aetherling, Jace, and Elspeth. I mean, there are no Snapcasters anymore for him to bring the bring the beats. That's how he wins unless Reid runs himself out of cards. And at this point, Nick, I believe, has drawn more cards than Reid, so I would say that Reid has the edge on library. We also know Reid has the edge on creatures left in his deck.
Yeah, and in terms of ways to win the game, there are certainly more for Reid left in the library. If I'm Reid right now, I'd be pretty excited, actually. And goodbye verdicts.
Wow, was that all 3 verdicts?
That looked like 3 verdicts to me.
So,
boom. Jace. And now we have dueling Jaces once again, and we have the flip. Sphinx's Revelation, Island, and Hero's Downfall.
Yeah, so Nick splits the land and the downfall away from the Rev.
I predict he's going to take the Hero's Downfall.
Yeah, what do we know that Reid has here?
I am wrong.
He's going to go with the Revelation.
That's just fine. So here's one of the reasons. Reid, a much more experienced Esper control player than me, he is going for a long game, and I think he views that Jace as not being as... Oh, and he casts it right away, in for 4.
He wants
now,
that Rev.
His hand is empty for the not empty, he's low, so this is just going to fill him up.
Right, he just went from 3 cards to 7 off of that main phase Sphinx's Revelation, and now he passes back to Nick. So right now, Game 1 here in our first round of Standard of the StarCityGames.com Open Series, featuring the Invitational live from Indianapolis. We are watching a Esper Control mirror match. Nick Edgerle casting Divination there. He's got a Jace Architect of Thought on 1 counter, which he has not yet activated this turn. He's going to tick it up right now as we speak, and he's going to tap 6 and cast an Elspeth. Elspeth, Sun's Champion, new Planeswalker out of Theros. This is the Esper Planeswalker tag team of late, also blue-white control Planeswalker tag team. Jace Architect of Thought and Elspeth. And Reid says, yeah, here, have some tokens. Here's some soldiers for you, buddy.
One of the things I like to think about with these control mirrors, in some ways it's like you're both on a rowboat trying to knock the other one off, and at a certain point someone pushes their foot down and the rowboat starts rocking, and then you're just both main phasing these huge spells.
Yeah,
who will make it work? Will you fall off? D-Sphere.
Detention Sphere is going to take care of Elspeth, leaving Nick with 3 dudes. Seriously.
Remember, Jace very good at dealing with 1/1s.
Yes. So Reid is not afraid of those soldiers. He's going to tick up his Jace to 3 counters and pass back to Nick. So Reid Duke at 18, Nick Edgerle at 27, but we know life totals have very little relevance right now at this point in the game.
Yeah, and Nick Edgerle, Detention Sphere. I think I saw yet another Supreme Verdict in his hand. Does he run 4 in his deck? He does?
He's going to Detention Sphere Jace, and it gets his own Jace too. That's an odd play. I would have.
Well, he does have another Jace in his hand.
Okay. I mean, I still think I may have just drawn some cards off of my own Jace. You know, like at least activate the ability.
And there's the other
Replace
Jace.
it.
Yeah, I think he might have just forgotten that he could minus.
Yeah.
And then make the play.
Because his Jace was on 2.
Or the other thing is, what if he minuses it, losing his Jace, cast Attention Sphere, and it's countered?
Okay, that's fair. So he just ticks up his own, his fresh Jace and passes back to Reid. So Reid with, it appears 12 lands currently in play and 2 Detention Spheres. Those are his only permanents. Nick, oh, well, he says, I'll add another Detention Sphere to the board. Take your Jace. Wow, I hope they're not playing the same sleeves, or good thing they're not playing the same sleeves, because the all kinds of Detention Spheres on each other's Jaces. And there you see Blood Baron of Vizkopa.
Well, that is one of 2 Blood Barons in Reid Duke's deck, and he lays one of the temples. We see a card draw from Nick Edgerle with Azorius Charm. It's a ton of mana on both sides, a ton of Detention Spheres on both sides, and 3 soldiers facing 1 Baron, the Blood Baron of Vizkopa.
This is pretty big right here. We saw Nick earlier in the game discard, I believe, 3 verdicts. He has apparently the 4th verdict, so maybe it's not as important as I thought.
No, I mean, that's still a big deal. That means that Nick Edgerle has no answers left in his deck to the final Blood Baron.
What I was going to say was I could see a Doomblade and I think an Ultimate Price also in Nick's hand, and Blood Baron just scoffs at those.
Jace gets dissolved. Reid says, okay. And down goes a card to the bottom for Nick Edgerle. And then we see yet another Temple of Silence from Reid Duke, and he puts his card on the bottom as well.
Yeah, so Reid unable to resolve his Jace Architect of Thought. So the board is all lands and Detention Spheres right now.
Another Temple from Reid Duke, another card to the bottom. I wonder how much work a Thassa would do in this board state.
Yeah, Thassa would be pretty good right here.
You see just how much these players are both just using the Scry ability to try to sculpt something out of these draws. It's land go for these players.
I believe at this point Nick is down to 1 Elspeth. Well, he's definitely down to 1 Elspeth. Not quite sure how many Jaces, but I want to say he may be Jaceless. Oh, he's close to it. And then his only other path to victory is decking Reid.
Elspeth.
And, yeah, Reid says, I've got an Elspeth.
Here come soldiers.
We know Nick has a Detention Sphere in hand. In fact, he's got 2 Detention Spheres in hand, so we're very likely to see that cast from Nick.
I think we're looking at the possibility of a Sphinx's Revelation. He goes, kill one of those dudes. Kill one of those dudes.
Price another one.
Kill one of those dudes.
So Nick trades 3 cards for 1 activation of Elspeth. There you see Elspeth, Sun's Champion, and Elspeth is going to be put in detention.
Now Reid Duke has 1 Elspeth and 1 Blood Baron left for finishers.
Actually, Reid, I think, only plays 1 Elspeth main, so that's...
Oh, you're right. He's got 1 Blood Baron left for finishers. And then the question of Jace as a possible finisher.
Right. There's been so many Jaces on either side of the table that not quite sure how many are left in the players' libraries. As you can see, there are 2. Actually, I think those are just 3 straight Jaces detained on that. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's Elspeth. Jace Elspeth on Reid's side, and Jace Elspeth on Nick's side.
Dissolve stops the last Jace, I believe. Jace. That's Reid's. Is that Reid's last Jace?
It has to be his last Jace.
Well, it could, maybe not. I mean, there's
I see there's a Jace in Reid's graveyard and 3 Jaces on Reid's side of the board. Now, some of those are Nick's, but that's 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 Jaces in sight right now, and there may be the 8th in Nick's graveyard. I suspect it is.
You see them both count their libraries, and Reid Duke ups his... Oh, yet another D-Sphere, and an Elspeth, the last finisher for Nick Edgerle in his deck.
How many D-Spheres main is... Reid's got a 4th Detention Sphere that he could draw to answer that Elspeth. Nick is only running 3 main deck Detention Spheres. Wow, this is just haymaker, answer, back and forth. So Elspeth hits the table, makes some soldiers, and wow, it's like hot potato.
Reid untaps, says go. Oh boy.
All right. Reid looking at his graveyard. I'd like to get a look at Reid's hand. Maybe Nick will cast a Thoughtseize or something.
In for 3 come the little guys.
So now life total is beginning to matter because Reid is on quite a clock at this point. He's going to count his library, but he's going to need to deal with those soldiers in that Elspeth.
Roughly 20 cards.
And check
and roughly 14 cards for Nick Edgerle.
That sounds about right. It seems like Nick was drawing a lot more cards. Reid is going to cast Sphinx's Revelation for, looks like, just 3.
I think that that means that right now it's very likely that he will definitely not be decked with this Revelation. He's keeping himself ahead of that.
He should know roughly the bottom 6 cards of his library. I'm sorry, maybe not 6. It depends on how many he bottomed. But he bottomed a lot off of those temples. So he should know the bottom, say, 3 or 4.
Well, in theory, of course, you have to remember every single card you've scryed to the bottom, which could be hard sometimes.
Right, that's pretty difficult. So there's a Supreme Verdict. So that will stem the tide for a moment. Nick, of course, will just make 3 more off of that Elspeth. The real problem is the Elspeth.
And you see Nick counting his library because he recognizes that he could very well die. Now, what he's trying to do here is he's trying to put enough cards in his hand to be able to finish this game out without basically getting the dissolves and what he needs to protect this game.
Yeah. He's on Protect Elspeth. That's what his plan is. Protect Elspeth. He figures he can win faster. As long as he protects Elspeth, he can win before he gets decked. And there's the soldiers off of Elspeth. He's going to play a Scryland.
To the bottom. Not many cards left, though. This is 21 minutes into this game.
All right, land go, says Reid Duke. Reid with just a few cards in hand. Looks like 3 or 4. Elspeth ticks up yet again. She is now on 8 counters.
Now, if we look at Elspeth, she's got 3 great abilities. One of those abilities will actually kill the Blood Baron of Vizkopa.
Right. All right, Reid. Reid is going to cast Thoughtseize. So we see Hero's Downfall, Doomblade, Divination, and 3 lands.
You can see Elspeth on the left there. -3, destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. +1, you see all the tokens. And -7, look at that emblem. +2/+2 and flying for all of your creatures.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, Elspeth is just going to go ultimate and Nick's going to swing in for the win. So Reid has to find an answer for Elspeth. Not only does she go ultimate, but she sticks around to make more guys if somehow Reid deals with what's on the table with something like Supreme Verdict, as we saw him do a couple turns ago. So in comes a bunch of tokens. Wow, I'm surprised Nick didn't just go for the
put him to the
ultimate.
test.
Yeah.
Put Reid to the test. Show me that you are not dead.
All right, so 9 tokens on Nick's side of the board. He passes back to Reid. Reid is now at 7. Azorius Charm. And it's Supreme Verdict off the top. Supreme Verdict deals with all the tokens.
Pass the turn, all those lands. Far away, drawn by Nick Edgerle. That's a card that could actually answer that last Blood Baron.
Yeah.
We see Elspeth, 3 more creatures.
Reid, I think, is playing for the decking win condition as far as the way he seems to be playing the game. He's playing very defensively. He doesn't, I mean, if he doesn't have Blood Baron, he doesn't have it, and we know Nick has an answer. So more tokens, more soldiers from Nick's Elspeth. Elspeth now up to 11, and Reid scoops him up.
Whew, that was a long one.
That was a long one. So 23 and a half minutes roughly for that game 1, and yeah, it was just like it started off a couple of Jace fights, and then it was just haymaker, answer, haymaker, answer, haymaker, answer until Nick was left with the I guess you could say Reid was left with the hot potato, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I talked about that that metaphor of the people on the boat, you've got a rowboat and 2 people standing on it trying to knock the other person off, just standing there. That's kind of what happened, right? We had one person push the edge of the boat down. Now it's wobbling. The other person taps out. The other person taps out. And in the end, the whole, basically, who falls in the water.
Yeah. So looking at the sideboards, I'm going to take a look at Nick's. He's got 2 extra Thoughtseize. That brings him to 4 total. He's got 3 Blood Barons in his board. 2 Negate, 2 Gainsay, a Detention Sphere, Pithing Needle, Glare of Heresy, 2 Soldier of the Pantheon, and a Pack Rat. Interesting inclusion of pack rat.
That's
there in the
really
sideboard.
interesting,
That's not
actually.
something I've seen before. I think he brings in the Thoughtseize, he brings in the Negates, he brings in the Gainsay, he probably brings in the Blood Barons, possibly brings in the fourth sphere and the Needle, and could even bring in Glare to deal with the Tension Spheres, which, as you saw, that was the main non-land permanent that was on board in that game. He's got quite a lot of options to bring in, and he's got a lot that he can bring out, he can board out. He's got a ton of otherwise dead removal. He's got 2 Doomblades, he's got 2 ultimate price. You saw him use a Doomblade and an ultimate price, a Doomblade and 2 ultimate price on tokens, because, you know, what else are they doing? So what do you think on Reid's side? What do we got?
Well, Reid's full sideboard is 2 Doomblade, 1 Ultimate Price, 1 Pithing Needle, 1 Dark Betrayal, 2 Jace Memory Adept, 2 Negate, 4 Gainsay, and 2 Blood Baron of Escopa. Now, you'll notice there were no extra Thoughtseizes in there. He has his 2 main deck Thoughtseize, and other than that, he's got 6 counter spells he's definitely going to bring in. 2 Jace Memory Adept, that's the Jace to the face. The blue 3 Jace, that its ability of mill someone for 10. That can end a game really quickly.
It certainly can. Now, the downside to using Jace Memory Adept, or to relying on it, Hero's Downfall's all over the place.
Yeah.
As you can see in just these decks. So it's scary, although Shaheen Sarani, very, I guess, accomplished control mage himself, has gone with the theory that you'll also see in his deck tech, if it's not up yet, of overloading on Planeswalkers, assuming that they're going to be casting their Hero's Downfalls. You get to the point where they've used them all up, and then you slam your final Memory Adept and hopefully go all the way. But it's interesting because I haven't seen it a lot.
Well, one of the things about the Adept is that a lot of people often only think about the 0 ability of the Adept, but Reid is not one of those people. He will remember the draw a card ability, which is actually a pretty relevant thing if you don't feel like you've gotten to the position where you have the game under control yet. So that is a valuable aspect of this. One of the cards I actually think could be very powerful in Nick's sideboard is the 1 Glare of Heresy, which can free something from a detention sphere.
Right, that's what I had mentioned,
Yeah. Like, I think that's one of the coolest cards in this 15 card sideboards for both of these players.
I'm surprised that we haven't seen more Glare of Heresy because of the prevalence of Detention Sphere in the format. It is a little slow. It's a sorcery, but, you know, ooh, that dirty word, right?
Yeah.
Sorcery is a dirty word.
Well, sorcery doesn't feel like sorcery when it's 1 mana. You know what I mean? It's just when it's so cheap. It really is. It
doesn't
feels
Glare cost 2? A white and 1?
Oh, you are correct. That is white and
still,
1.
It's still fairly cheap.
Dark Betrayal is the 1 mana.
Yes,
Yeah, Glare of Heresy is the 2 mana.
Dark Betrayal's an instant.
Yes.
But we'll talk about that in another match. We are underway here in Game 2. Nick with a Scryland turn 1, and Reid with some Scrylands. A couple of black-white Scrylands. That's Temple of Silence, and Nick's got the blue-black one. So both of these players currently missing a color, but on board anyway. But both of them scrying for their first couple of turns. And Thoughtseize is the first play of the game. Reid Duke is going to show us Nick's hand. We've got Island, we've got Hallowed Fountain, we've got Jace, Aetherling, Blood Baron, Blood Baron. So that is a threat-heavy hand. Does Reid go for Jace here and hope to fight the other guys? Jace is going to be the first spell taken. Yeah, that's what Reid goes for.
That's what he goes for.
Yeah, Jace is the first castable card in his hand, so may as well take that. He's a little further away from Blood Baron and Aetherling.
And there's a Jace. Any answers, Nick? Okay, no answers. Last game, Nick Edgerle was the first player to get a Jace in play. This time it's Reid Duke, and unless Nick draws a Jace, he takes the Elspeth there instead of the 2-land. Unless Nick draws a Jace, we'll probably see what happened with Reid Duke, where Reid Duke ran away, Nick Edgerle ran away with the card advantage early, and Reid had to really fight to be in it. This time, it's Reid with the Jace.
Yeah, I think in the last 2 turns now, we cut away too quickly. I missed the shot of Nick's hand, but I think Nick's gone runner, revelation in the last 2 turns after we've seen that Thoughtseize. Not that matters yet, but that could matter quite a bit later. And you're going to see, actually, Nick is just going to cycle a Revelation, which to me means I think he did go runner, Revelation because he's wasting one just to cycle it.
He saw a Jace there.
All right, yeah, his hand is now Jace, Architect of Thought, which he is casting. He's got a second copy of Revelation in hand, and then that Aetherling and double Blood Baron.
That is a really huge 3 cards revealed by Jace. We see Dissolve, Thoughtseize, and Island. It's a hard one here.
Reid is going to split the Thoughtseize away, and Nick is going to take the counterspell on the island.
Remember that Reid already has an Elspeth in hand.
Yeah, Nick very well could have taken the Thoughtseize and then used that to take the Elspeth, but he declined that option. So Reid now on his turn is going to -2 his Jace, putting it down to 1, and he sees land, land, land. Nick splits the Scry land away from the other 2. Reid immediately just takes the other 2. So Reid with plenty of lands in hand. We've seen him... well, the fact that he took Elspeth over the 2 lands made me feel like Reid may already have some lands for a few turns, and now he's got some more. So he's going to go ahead and cast that Elspeth now off of an untapped Hallowed Fountain, so he's going to take 2 damage to do it, but Elspeth resolves and brings along 3 soldiers.
Now, lest you be totally thinking the game is over right now, Nick Edgerle has a Jace to hold back the 1/1s.
Yes.
And then he has Blood Barons ×3 in hand.
To also hold back the 1/1s.
Now, a Blood Baron dropped into play, though, does have an easy answer with the Elspeth in play. Elspeth's -3 ability is destroy all creatures sized 4 power or greater.
Yeah, and I imagine if Reid doesn't have another answer for that Blood Baron, we're going to see her do that right now. And look at that.
Boom.
Elspeth just kicks that Blood Baron right to the curb, swings in with 3 soldiers, and Jace is going to tick up. Of course, that did nothing because Nick's Jace ticked up. All those were 0-1s, and Nick did not miss that trigger.
Aetherling joins the party. And one of the things I like that Reid Duke put Nick to the test, if you remember the last Invitational, Reid Duke would have lost one of his matches that was very late in the day if his opponent remembered all of the triggers, but his opponent did not. So Reid putting Nick to the test, Nick passing.
All right, Jace is going to -2 for Nick. We're going to see Detention Sphere. Looks like Gainsay and Hero's Downfall. Spell, spell, spell. A lot of answers. Gainsay would have been something that Nick would have really liked when that Aetherling was resolving, but he takes Gainsay, Detention Sphere, puts the Hero's Downfall to the bottom. And Nick with 6 lands and a Jace on 1 in play. Reid with 7 lands. He was on the play. 3 soldiers, an Elspeth on 2, a Jace on 2, and an Aetherling. This board is quite lopsided at the moment.
And for Reid to win this match, he's going to need it to be lopsided. There's only so much time left.
Yes. Blood Baron number 2 appears to be the play here from Nick, although he's hesitating. Now
One of the things with that Blood Baron, it's going to have trouble fighting through an Aetherling.
It is, and then that Elspeth can certainly take care of it as long as Reid waits a couple turns, as we saw it do for the first Blood Baron. Now, what Reid does not know is that Nick has a 3rd copy of Blood Baron in hand as well. So Blood Baron resolves. Nick passes back to Reid. Reid draws for the turn. He has got pretty full grip, I want to say. He's got Gainsay, a Dissolve. He's got a couple of lands. He's got a Sphinx's Revelation. I think, does he have a 2nd Elspeth in his board?
He does not.
Okay, then it's not Elspeth that I thought I saw.
This Elspeth in play for Reid Duke is the only Elspeth that he has.
Okay.
And I think we're going to see a unblockable Aetherling perhaps killing that Jace. And then before the end of the main phase before the end of the main phase, flickering away. Heck, maybe he won't even make it unblockable. Look at that. He's like, yeah,
he says,
yeah, just block it. Feel free.
I like how he pointed at the Blood Baron as if he could control what blocked. I think he was really pointing at Nick, but it looked like he pointed
He's
at Blood
going
Baron.
for Nick's face.
Yeah.
That is Aetherling going to the face.
Yeah, so Aetherling connects for 8. Elspeth ticks up. Aetherling gets blinked out and comes right back in at the end of turn. So Jace on 3, Elspeth on 3, Aetherling now untapped 6 soldier tokens, which are white, so Blood Baron on the other side of the table does have protection from them.
And we see a plus from the Jace there for Nick Edgerle.
Yeah, it's going to help keep those soldiers at bay for a while. Nick now with 7 lands in play, has not played a land yet for the turn. I don't know that he has a land drop. He's got a Detention Sphere. Looks like that's going to be the play here. Detention Sphere. Oh, he doesn't play it. Thinking about it. Taps 3. Yeah, there it is. Detention Sphere on the stack. Does it resolve? And if so, what is the target?
Gainsay is the answer.
And we and Nick also were aware of Gainsay in Reid's hand. Now, Nick also has a Gainsay. Gainsay fights Gainsay pretty well.
This is true.
There
you can see the new art for Gainsay. A pretty sweet piece of art, I think.
I agree. So it looks like Gainsay back, says Nick. All right, Gainsay. Detention Sphere resolves. Elspeth gets detention. And Reid says, I don't know what she did to deserve detention, but Nick apparently thought she deserved it and deals with it that way. And then passes back to Reid with no play there. The Aetherling holding back the Blood Baron holding back the Blood Baron along with the Jace holding back Reid's soldiers. And
that was pretty awesome. That's a Gainsay, a negate, and a Supreme Verdict. Remember, one of the things that Aetherling can do, Aetherling can attack, flicker out, and then once it's flickered out, the Supreme Verdict could be used. That's one possibility. Reid decides to go with the, after the split is made, Gainsay, negate, 2 very powerful weapons in this matchup.
Yeah, very interesting. So Reid declines to take the Supreme Verdict. That goes on the bottom. To me, it seems like Reid is just completely ignoring the Blood Baron. Like, meaning, like, he just doesn't... I guess he did answer the first one with the Elspeth, but this second one, he doesn't seem to be too concerned about.
He's rolling over the top of it.
Yeah.
And he says, untargetable, attack.
Or unblockable.
Unblockable, pardon me, attack. And now... is he attacking Nick, or is he attacking the Jace?
The fact that he pumped it makes me think he's attacking Nick.
Yeah, I agree.
It goes up to 6, so he knocks Nick down to 6, and then he untaps the Aetherling with the Blink ability and passes back to Nick. So Reid with, yet again, 6 soldiers, Aetherling, and a Jace on 1.
Now Nick has to be very careful here. Those soldiers also represent a potential kill. Even with that Blood Baron in play, it's a little bit more damage. He can block 1 should they attack with if there were no Jace, and then gain the 4 and still get in that little bit of damage. Right now he's so low in life, every little bit matters. He goes minus here, so those soldiers do represent a potential threat.
Finds Supreme Verdict, Island, and Dissolve. So Verdict not super scary because it deals with the soldiers but not the Aetherling. It really depends on what Reid wants to resolve. And it looks like that's how he's splitting it. He's saying he respects the Dissolve over the Verdict and Island. So let's see what Nick wants. Does Nick respect the soldiers? Yeah, that's what he's going to go with. Oh, no, he's putting those on the bottom. So he's going to take the Dissolve.
One of the things that Nick is at the point of, he's at that point where he's going to have to start shooting removal at the Aetherling just to fog.
Yeah. And he does have a Hero's Downfall, so that's something he can use to fog for the turn.
In comes the Blood Baron. And Nick is like, okay, yeah, you got it. I'll gain 4 life. Dead Blood Baron.
Why is Nick at, well, now I know why he's at 11, but why was he at 7?
Pass back. We see Reid Duke untap. Attack comes on in. We have an attack here, and Nick's like, you know what? That's all she wrote. Okay, now I would say control players take note. That first game took a long time. The second game didn't take nearly as much time. But in none of those games were either of these players dawdling.
Right.
You know, like, one thing I see a lot, particularly at PTQs, is people playing a blue-white deck or an Esper control deck and them taking a lot of time on their decisions. Now, it's always good to make the right decision, but not at the cost of getting a draw.
Right.
Not at the cost of getting into game 3 with not enough time to finish, and then taking almost no time on any decision.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's odd because when you're playing something like a red deck, you have, especially one that's oriented towards winning fast. You feel like you play faster because your deck just has so much momentum. You're like, turn 1, Fire Drinker Satyr. Turn 2, Ash Zealot. You're like, I have all this momentum. It's just like boom, 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 boom. And with this kind of deck, it almost makes you feel like you should be going slow, right? Because you're not being so proactive. And I think that's something that you need to look beyond. You need
Absolutely.
The deck doesn't win fast, so you need to play fast to offset that.
Absolutely. Like if you watch Reid Duke play, and I'm actually thinking about at the SCG Invitational in Los Angeles, where both Nick Spagnuolo and Reid Duke were both playing slow decks. Reid was playing Bant Control and Spagnuolo was playing Esper Control. Both of those players were playing quite quickly, and one of the things that happened is that they never seemed to be in danger of running out of time. Now we have Nick Edgerle here starting things off. Temple of Deceit. Reid Duke looks like a Temple of Silence. One thing about the last game, Nick Edgerle did stop hitting his land drops at a certain point. Ooh, Pack Rat. Wow.
Reid did not expect that. I did not expect that. Pack Rat on turn 2 from Nick Edgerle, and that can really take over a game quickly if Reid does not answer it.
Now, cards that Reid has to answer it. Detention Sphere, Hero's Downfall, if he does it right away, and Supreme Verdict.
Yes.
The Detention Sphere and the Supreme Verdict will take care of all of the rats at any time, but the question is, are they there for Reid?
So Reid plays a Scry land and puts it on the bottom, puts his top card on the bottom. He does have a Thoughtseize, I think, in hand. Declines to cast it here.
We see Nick Edgerle takes 2, discards an extraneous land to his Pack Rat, attack.
So he's got a 2/2 Pack Rat into the red zone.
And we see the token there replacing that die. I would have been confused by that die. I would be wondering how many Pack Rats is that.
Right.
I believe that was an attempt to count the total.
Yeah.
Like the size of the Pack Rats.
It's a 2/2. So Reid says Scryland go, and Nick is going to swing in with both rats. This is a force of 2 bears, even though they're rats at this point. But that's a threatening force if Reid can't find an answer. And Nick with 3 mana up to make another rat at the end of turn. There we go, replacing the generic cardboard with an actual rat. All right, Reid says land go, and now here, end of turn, Nick says I'm going to make another rat, and now we're going to have 3 3/3s, and Reid is on a 2-turn clock if he doesn't have an answer.
And now remember, Nick Edgerle gets to almost pretend like he's an aggro control deck here. He gets to have the clock plus the counter magic. If Reid Duke does not have a card like Supreme Verdict, the game could be over right now.
Yeah, Reid takes a hit, goes to 9, and I'm sorry, he goes to 5. I'm not sure. Thought he was at 18, but either way, Reid now in serious, serious trouble.
We look at that right there,
and
there it's over.
Yeah. Pack Rat. 1 spell cast from Nick, right? That was the only spell he cast?
The only spell.
And, yeah, Nick Edgerle edges out Reid Duke in 3 games here in round 5 of the StarCityGames.com Open Series featuring the Invitational live from Indianapolis. I'm Joey Pasco in the booth with Adrian Sullivan.